Hi, this is a video about C++ and namespaces. A namespace allows you to have multiple identifiers, either variable names, class names, structure names, function prototypes. Identifiers can have the same exact name, character for character. So in a simple example I created here, I have three variables with the exact same name of Donald. So I've got Donald Duck, I've got Donald Trump, and I've got just a number 9 for Donald. So three variables with the same names. Normally without namespaces that would cause big problems, compile errors, because we can't redefine what that variable name means later in the program. But with namespaces we can have the same variable name multiple times. So let's look at the first namespace. So I define my own namespace. I've got the keyword namespace and cartoons, and inside the curly braces I can have function prototypes, class definitions, structure definitions, different variables, and all I've got is two strings, one for Donald and saying that's Donald Duck, and the other from Mickey, that's Mickey Mouse. And I could list other cartoon characters here if I wanted to. And then right below it, I define another namespace for different people in the news. It could be celebrities or politicians. In this case, I just have one variable in this namespace, and the name is Donald, and it corresponds to Donald Trump. He's in the news quite a lot lately. So in main, I define one variable, and it's also called Donald, and it's not even the same data type. It's an int instead of a string. So I'll set that to 9. And I'm able to access all three Donalds in main, and to tell one apart from the other, I could just say Donald to get the local copy, the 9. I can say the name of the namespace and then the scope resolution operator, those two colons, and then Donald to get the Donald Duck, and then to get Donald Trump I'd have news, scope resolution operator, and then Donald. So that all compiles and runs just fine, and I can see I can access all three of those variables. What are our alternatives? So some people don't like to type in the name of the namespace and the scope resolution operator. So one alternative is that we could use kind of like what we did at the top here with using namespace std. We can do using namespace, and then let's pick the cartoons namespace. So using that line, I've got something called a using directive, and that using directive says pull in anything inside that namespace, and you're now allowed to use that in main without, and I'm going to get rid of this Donald because there would still be a collision there, and we'd override that name. So without using the cartoons and scope resolution operator, we can go ahead and just print Donald, and it'll know that it's pulled that in from cartoons. So I'll compile and I'll run, and I'll see, yep, it was able to print Donald Duck just by using the word Donald. One disadvantage to the using directive, is that if I did have a local variable with the same name, it's not going to give me any compile warnings that there's two variables with the same name that I'm able to use. It's just going to use my local copy. Another alternative is a using declaration. So we could, instead of saying we want to pull in all of those cartoon characters, so I didn't show, but I could have also printed out Mickey, because I pulled in everything from that namespace. So if I compile and run, I can see Mickey Mouse is actually being pulled in when I pull in all those cartoon characters. So another alternative, let's say I don't want to pull in everything from that namespace, I just want to pull in one variable, the Donald Duck. So I can say using from cartoons Donald, and it'll pull in just the Donald Duck, and I no longer can just use Mickey without specifying what namespace Mickey comes from. So I'd have to do something like this. Let me comment out this local version of Donald so that we can get the version that we wanted to pull in using that direct declaration, along with we can see that we have to specify what namespace Mickey's in. And yep, we can pull in Donald Trump. So a lot of people kind of like these using directives and using declarations because it saves a bit of typing, but there are some dangers to doing it that way. One of the dangers, we kind of saw that there was a name collision if we picked the same variable name as the namespace did. I could make a really extreme example here, and what if I have a variable named cout in my program? Well, cout had a very important use already in printing to the screen. This will actually give me compile errors every time I try to use cout. So is it possible to have a variable cout as well as the cout that we know and love that we're including from the IO stream? Yeah, absolutely. So the IO stream has cout, and it has it in a namespace std, and we're not forced to specify where this comes from because we've got this using namespace line up here. But we could just get rid of that, and instead of saying cout is coming from that namespace, cout can come from a variable we define, and we could say I want the cout that we use to print output to the screen, and we're going to find out if we try to compile this that endl also comes from this namespace. So we could fully qualify that for any time we use cout and endl, and in fact if we try to compile again, we'll also find out that string is also coming from that namespace. So if we're not including that using namespace std line, then anything that comes from that namespace like string or cout, cn, endl, we'll have to have the name of the namespace and scope resolution operator. So a bit more typing, but some companies require this, that you don't have those using namespace lines, because they want you to know exactly what namespace you're getting all of your variables and classes and structures and functions from. So in some cases you'll want to go ahead and include the namespace scope resolution operator.